welcome to another Random Code stream. My name is Jason Bach, and I'm going to continue the work I did in the last stream, where we're improving the parameter handling in rocks just a little bit, not a lot. This isn't a big change, but it's a slight improvement change. So let's get my music started, as I always do. And after the last stream, I thought about the remaining work, and especially it had to do with params that were using ref structs, like span or read-only a span. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to remove the no argument constructor to ref struct argument. But I'm like, no, that's a bad idea, because that's signaling that you don't care about any doing any validation. Whatever passes in is fine. Or you pass it a predicate to do the validation for you. So what I realized what I actually need to do is say, when I'm generating those expectation methods for methods and indexers, that if the params is not ref-like, then we do another generation pass. So in other words, if it's a collection, if it's like a list, or if it's an array, then we want to do another pass where we have the overload that just says param string array values or whatever it is. If it is ref-like, we don't need to do another pass. And we don't need to make that second method, because we're just going to have that there, and then you're going to use that to say, hey, whatever your ref struct argument is going to be, it's going to be. Now, if you have an optional parameter, then we're going to be generating a second pass anyway. So when we do the second pass, we have to say that if the params argument is ref-like, then we're going to just generate it again with the ref struct argument type as a parameter type and pass the argument into the first overload. Okay, this may seem a little confusing, but it's really the only way to handle these ref structs. And then everything, I think, should be done. Okay, and then we're going to need, as we do, tests. All right, so I think I had where do I do this? Hey, Electron. I just did this in the last stream. Okay, there we go. That's what we want. And then we're going to need to go into the indexer. There we go. And then the setter. Okay, so that's the first part. Now the second part is, if we are generating up here. Okay, so here we need to say, if it's a params, then what we want to do is say parameter dot type is ref-like. No, not is reference, is ref-like type. Because if it is, we need to do something else. We need to do something. And I believe the videos of us, I don't know what you're referring to. Sorry. Oh, wait a minute. I guess we don't do it up here. This is not the right spot. I think. We'll do this with methods first to make sure I've got it right. These are the parameter. I think we needed them both, actually. Yeah, okay, I think I got it. So up here, that's what we want to do. Sort of. We want to pass in the parameter name. We want to have that there because that's where we're putting in as the instance parameters. Okay. Because we're saying we're generating with the defaults, that's the second pass. And then when we come to that, we're saying if it's params, but it's a ref-like type, we're just simply putting that ref struct argument type in there again. And now down here, we just want to say parameter name. Oh. Like that. Okay. And there's probably a slightly easier way to read this and make it better, but I'm going to stick with that. So now if I come down here and I go into my tests, these are probably all going to fail. So we're going to have to regenerate stuff, which is fine. Two pass, two fail. Okay. So when it's not a ref struct, we're doing the right thing, and that makes sense because we don't care. It's when we do this, and how did it change? Oh, that's right, because now we're saying we don't need to generate, in this case, the second one. Correct. Okay. All right, let's just... Let's do the thing where we regenerate. Because that's just easier. Okay, and then the other one was this one. Okay, cool. I also have to remember that we have to change the integration tests in like 1 or 2 spots to handle this. Now we also need tests. And we also need which two I just changed. Okay, so that's the method I changed. And then this one is params and indexer. It's actually surprising because we didn't change anything in the builder. Oh, we did. We did. Yes, 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 we did. Okay. I did do that. I don't think, though, that I did the same change here, though. If you go back up to the getter, we say is ref like. We just want it to be the parameter name. Okay, so now what we need are tests that say generate params and method is ref struct and optional exists. Because in that case, like we have an int value equals 3. Now we should see 2 generated, and one is just going to simply delegate to the other. Whoops, whoops, whoops. That was not what I intended. So let's look quick. Yep, so we have the to value 3 here, but we still have to say a rough struct argument of args, and we simply pass that into this one. And that fails. How could that fail? I just literally copied and... Wait. This affected the make? Oh, okay, sorry. It took me a second to realize what just happened. So, yeah, that's perfect sense. We have to regenerate the make as well. Okay. It's like, what the heck? Optional parameters appear at all required parameters. Is this not valid? Rename. Perform. Fuck. Sorry. No, that's fine. That is fine. Oh, we forgot the... Okay, I see. Yeah, we need to say params. No. Oh, shoot. I just went down another rabbit hole. How am I going to do this? I see what the problem is. Because this is now just a normal parameter. but we're putting an optional in front. Which you're not supposed to do. And I get why. But what I'm going to do let's go to, I keep all my presentations around for just such an emergency. So when's the last time I did this? I did this in Orlando. This is me doing this in VS Live Orlando. But yeah, the myth is that they need to go in a certain order. But what you can do is something like this. And that does work. So you can stick an optional parameter in front of something that isn't optional if you use these attributes. And that will work. Now, if it was, if this was a params array, it would be perfectly fine. In fact, let's put that test in here to illustrate that. And I'm just starting to throw things around willy-nilly and not really is not ref struct. So here we're going to say params string args. Okay, and now we got to regenerate stuff. So give me a minute to show this. And you're like, nobody would ever do this. Yes, they would. If there's one thing I've learned about supporting this library is people will do things that I will not anticipate. And if you're authoring a source generator, you better anticipate that people will do things that you do not expect that are technically valid. I guarantee you I would find an interface or a type definition somewhere that somebody's going to do this exact thing, and my code will not handle it correctly. And see, this works, and it's perfectly fine what I'm doing here. Okay, which is right here. So we have another dilemma on our hands. We can handle it, I believe, if we change this to have that attribute on it. Am I AI? No. So if I go to .NET Lab, and let's say I make a public, we can make it interface. It doesn't matter. Optionals, void, do, whatever. And I say int value equals 3, and then string data. Okay, now this should complain and say optional parameters, but let's do this. Okay. And we're going to say 3 here. Okay, now you don't know what these are. And now that works. Now let's turn it into a class because I want to public void just show you how you can invoke these. So if I say here var optionals equals new optionals, and then I say optionals perform, I could pass in 3 here, right? But what the problem is now is it recognizes that value has an optional value of 3. So if I do data there, so now that works. You just have to name the parameter value directly. Okay. But you notice that you don't have to pass in value. So if I say here, console write line, and I say value data, okay. Yes, you don't know what that is, system. And now I say run that, you see I get 3, 3. And just to be very clear, if I do this as 44, okay, or I could say 4 and 44, and that works. It's just the only thing that this attribute approach changes is that you can't, you have to then name the required parameter. Okay, and if I had another must have, okay, let's change this up a little bit and say must have value and data. No, now I do have to pass that in, right? But if I wanted to not pass in value, I still have to name data. And that works. Okay. So I have to go to the bathroom real quick. I will be back in a couple of minutes. Don't go anywhere. Listen to the music in the background. And what I'm going to do is also think about, do I want to put this in for this case that I've just run into? So, again, I'll be back in a couple minutes. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. This is a great time to do it. And when I come back, we'll continue working on this. Okay, back. Well, this is getting very complicated. So, because I thought too, what happens if somebody puts a params? Like if somebody defines it this way, what happens if somebody comes in and defines the optional this way? Forget about params. How do we handle it? You shy? The case that we care about is if and params always have to be at the end. I don't think many. I don't think you can say param string values and then throw this after. I don't think that's allowed. Even if you do that, that has to be at the end. Yes, even if you put this on here. But you can move around an optional value anywhere you want before a params. So it does not have to be after the required parameters if you put these attributes on it. If I don't put these attributes on it, and I said 3 here, well, now it's going to yell, and it's going to say that's not allowed. So we have an interesting dilemma, which is, what does rocks do if it runs into something like this? Forget about the params for just a second. What does it do? And then, what is it going to do in the case where if it is a params, but it's a ref-like? See, in that case, we may or may not, it may or may not have these on them. In all likelihood, people do not do this. In fact, I didn't know about this until I ran into this case that my presentation I was showing before. It was actually in rocks that I ran into it. So what do you... This one simple trick. I think first I got to add a test that just goes, what happens when somebody does this? And then the other thing we have to do is say, if we're going to put a ref struct, and this case that I just ran into only happens because we have a params that's a ref struct and an optional exists before it. If that didn't occur, we would be fine. There would be no issue. It's this optional. This is what's... Because what we end up... This is fine in terms of C#, but what it ends up making us do is generate this. And we don't want that. In this one case, if there are optionals before it, we need to put the optional default parameter value in front of it. And then it would work. And then you'd have to specify, if you're calling this version, what the args are. I mean, this is a very, very small edge case. But it's a valid one. And if I don't handle it, somewhere down the line, somebody's going to do this, you know. So we've got to be able to handle this. It's a tough one. It is a tough one. Because if we wanted to pass in this here and we wanted to have args, we'd have to say args : new, which says we don't care. We're not going to do that. Oh, the tangled webs we weave. Okay. Another snag. What will happen is we'll gen the second expectation method like this. And that's wrong because we can't have the optional in front defined like this. We could do optional. Let's go all out and fully qualified. So it's system runtime interrupt system runtime interop services dot optional. Attribute. I think you actually have to and then or can you say I don't know. We'd have to detect if those attributes exist or not before we define a method this way. This gets to how would Rocks handle this in the first place outside of a params. In other words, what would Rocks do with this? So we say we have a public interface, stuff, okay, and we say we'll do this, but we'll change it. So we'll say string. Actually, let's take what I did here. And then we say using system runtime. Interop services. And then we also want a case here where we just do it the quote-unquote normal way. So we'd have a must-have, we'd have data, and we put this here, except we do not use that. So I think what we have to do now is write some tests. I think I'll have enough information to handle what I'm going to do with this very small corner case with optionals and ref like params types. Okay, maybe I already have tests for this too. I don't know. So let's do I have for optional arguments. Well, I do for yeah, I think what happened with all the changes that I made is with the sets, it's no longer a problem that the value needs to be like first. That doesn't become, it all changed with this syntax change I made in 10. So that's actually good. But we do have a test to say, hey, that's with the caller attributes. I think what we want to do, we already have it if we have optionals for both the foo, for the method, and the this. What I'm saying here is what happens if somebody does this. Why? I don't know. But it could happen. So what I want is a test here. That is something I need to plead with the Visual Studio team, is stop suggesting test as the attribute if n units in scope. Just please stop doing that. Public async static task generate when optional is defined with attributes async. I cannot type this morning. So we're going to grab all this, and then we're going to change it, and then we're going to run our test, and we're going to see what happens. Nice stuff. Okay, let's move some things around here. Let's put that up here. We don't know what create's going to do just yet. We don't know what make's going to do, but we should at least start seeing some code. What happens in this case? And then we're also going to have here out of order. So in this case, what we're going to do is take that and put it here. At the very least, by watching this stream, you can go, what did I learn? You learned that you don't have to put default parameters after required ones. You can do some shenanigans to get around that if you want. I would not recommend such a thing, but you can do it. Okay? So. All right, let's see what happens here. This is not what I planned a path to go down with this, but it is what it is. And like I said at the beginning of this, first, what do? We write tests. Second of all, if there's a corner case, somebody is probably going to hit it. Oh, I'm being stupid. Hold on. Well, am I? No, I'm not. Okay. I just noticed something. So here in the expectations, we're not putting that attribute, we're not putting those attributes on here. And we're doing this. When we get down to the actual mock type, we're stating this, but then we're also putting the value there, which you cannot do, I don't think. Like, I can't say this is equal to 4. Yeah, and it's going to start barking. So, if a parameter is optional via the attributes, then when defining the expectations, it's technically okay the way we're doing it, but we don't want to. I think it's going to fall apart because when we do the second generation override, the overload, the second pass, it's not going to end up being correct. We must include the attributes and not put the default value with the parameter, i.e. int equals 3. When defining the mock, we are including the attributes, but we cannot assign the parameter to the default value. Exhausting. Did we get to the make yet? Yeah, we did. And the make. And or the make. I know what that means. Other people don't know what that's okay. So we got some more work to do. But I think once we do this work, well, when we do this work, it will handle the case of when we're using the attributes. But we still have to come back and say, if we have the case where an optional parameter comes before a ref-like params parameter, then we must define the optional parameter with the second pass overload with attributes. So what we're saying here is that this is saying if it's defined with the attributes, then we have to put those attributes there, and we have to not assign it. And then also we are including the attributes, but we cannot assign the parameter. But if we have the this is like, if we're doing this, except this, unless we're here, but we got here by going this route, unless it was raining and it's a Sunday, it's like we're starting to get into these very if cases, which is, it's a lot of fun, but it's not fun to handle. And again, it's such a small corner case, but I have to keep reminding myself, we got to do this. So if it does have the attributes, we're fine. In the sense of, we'll make the changes that I have in that to-do list that you see there, but then I'll have that being done correctly. Okay. If we have the case where an optional parameter comes before a ref-like params parameter, and it's not defined, and the optional does not use the attributes, then we must define the optional parameter with the sickness. In that case, we don't care about the mock implementation, because I will just put in like int values 3 params read only span, whatever, and that is perfectly fine. This is only for the expectations. But this is a special case of optional using the attributes. So what we're going to have to probably do is a case where we look at the last parameter and say, is it a params and is it a ref-like? Then any subsequent parameter that we're doing when we're iterating over, if it's an optional and it does not have the attributes on it, then we have to change it to have the attributes on it. Jeez, what a mess. And I've pretty much hit my time for this morning, so I'm gonna have to do this in a future stream. How many times I'm like, oh, this is a simple thing, we should get this done pretty quickly, and it turns out to be nothing like that. Let me save my work at least in a branch, or in my branch. 268 found more corner cases. I do, the encouraging thing here is I do see a path to get through this. It's just going to take some time to get there. It's not like I don't have a plan. I think the plan I have now should resolve all the things. But I will stress again, this is why you need unit tests in your code. You have to. There's no way, as far as I'm concerned, to write code that you don't have unit tests around, or just tests in general. This library, as I'm showing with this stream and the last one, making a small change can lead to other changes in other corner cases, and if I'm not careful, I could break a lot of things, or even just a couple things here and there. I have unit tests, I have integration tests, and I have this whole code generation test thing, which allows me to generate mock types from all these other NuGet packages and see if there's any compilation issues that have arisen. That has saved me so many times. So many times. And it's also uncovered things that I had no idea were even possible, that I just didn't know about. And so I've been able to add that support into Rocks. This is going to be another one that probably nobody's ever going to see. I bet nobody's ever going to run into this. But this is the power of source generators, because you can write code to handle those cases. And these perfectly valid cases. So the next stream I do for Random.Code will probably be on Thursday morning. And I'm going to continue to work on this and see if it can resolve it, or at least make good progress on it. I'm also going to be doing a gaming stream tonight. I'm going to be starting a new game, and if you're wondering what it is, you're just going to have to show up to find out what it is. So that is going to be 6:30 or 7 p.m. Central Time. So I want to thank everybody who stopped by to watch, either now live or in the future. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. I would really appreciate it. If you've already subscribed, I appreciate you for doing it. Again, next stream tonight will be a gaming stream, starting up a new game. And then Thursday morning, probably Thursday morning, I will be doing another Random.Code stream. But for now, I'm done with this stream. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you in the future.